there and back again. A Goggins Tale. Part 20. The Battle of the Pelennor Fields. The sky cracked like the gates of judgment had been cloven open. A fork of lightning struck the courtyard behind the Witch King, but he didn't flinch. He was the storm now. The mace swung high in his hand, huge, black, and unnatural. It pulsed with sorcery and malice. Saruman stepped left, Gandalf right, poised awaiting the Viper's strike, circling. "Do not let his weapon touch you, Gandalf," muttered Saruman. "See how it radiates its poison." "We shall take him together," Gandalf replied. The Witch King struck. His mace crashed into the stone where Saruman had stood a heartbeat ago, leaving an unbelievable crater 4 feet wide. Gandalf retaliated with a pillar of flame that roared from the tip of his staff, but the Wraith raised his hand and split it like smoke. Saruman conjured a cyclone of wind and razor-sharp debris, but the Nazgul willed for a troll to rush forward and take the attack, shielding him from its impact. The attack shred the troll in the blink of an eye, blasting those who stood behind with an enormous splatter of black blood. Without a second's hesitation, the Witch King lashing out with his cursed mace. Boom! His wide blow would have struck Gandalf had it not been blocked by a shield of light conjured by Saruman. Gandalf used the opening to hurl a bolt of white fire, catching the Nazgul in the chest and staggering him backward. But only for a moment. The Witch King advanced, undeterred, unstoppable. The ground itself seemed to recoil beneath his boots. Around them, no one moved. Not orc, nor man, nor troll. Every soul frozen watching gods at war. The Witch King raised his mace and struck again, but slower now, more labored. His mace met a wall of light conjured by Gandalf and bounced off. Saruman followed through, unleashing a thunderclap that tore a crater beneath the Wraith's feet and sent him skidding back across the courtyard. Another volley of magical fire struck his armor, rupturing shadow and steel. He staggered. His black form flickered. The magic binding his essence sputtered with each blow. And then it happened. Mid-swing, Gandalf's staff flared white. A crack of divine thunder surged forth, and the Witch King's mighty mace was blasted from his grip. It flew end over end before embedding into a distant wall with the force of a battering ram. The Witch King stood weaponless. For the first time in an age, he felt something strange claw at his empty chest. Fear. He could not win this. Not alone. Not against both of them. And not here. He faltered, the icy breath of inevitable defeat pressing against his mighty will. He, Morgul, Lord of the Nine, felt the first flicker of panic that he might not prevail and that he might fail his master. Denethor watched in disbelief. These two ancient beings, these sages, had not only held their ground but driven back the black breath of Mordor's terror. His mouth parted, and for once, no words came. Humbled, he gripped the arm of his son Boromir beside him, knuckles white, steadying himself. The Witch King had seen his own peril, and silently he gave the command. The hordes of Mordor surged forward with renewed ferocity. A tide of orcs, trolls, and beasts spilled through the broken gate with savagery, howling as they flooded the courtyard. "Shields!" Gandalf shouted. "Form ranks!" Boromir roared above the din. "To me, Gondor! To me!" Steel met iron in a violent collision. The courtyard became a storm of chaos. Faramir was lost somewhere in the fray, along with Denethor. Gandalf and Saruman had little time to finish the Witch King. The enemy had engulfed the field. The clash was brutal. The defenders, fewer in number and exhausted, began to buckle beneath the sudden weight of the charge. Screams echoed as the lines wavered. Then came the tremor. From the left flank, a group of monstrous trolls emerged, barbed clubs in hand, thundering across the stone like living siege engines. Their eyes glowed with malice, their growls louder than drums. "Stand your ground," Gandalf bellowed, his voice cutting through the panic. "You are the last line. Gondor stands with you." Saruman lifted his staff high, unleashing a wave of force that staggered the lead troll, but it did not fall. The others charged forward undeterred. The battle teetered on the edge of a knife. Denethor's sword was slick with black blood, but his grip was firm. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Boromir and Faramir, breathing heavily, armor dented, ash and blood smudged across his face. And yet, his eyes burned with purpose. "If this is the end," he said, barely above a whisper, "then let it be with my sons at my side." The line of stewards holds fast. Gondor is not yet broken. Just then, a new sound split the air. A horn. Deep, powerful. Rolling across the Pelennor. It echoed fury and ancient oaths, with the thunder of hooves behind it. The orcs paused mid-charge. Even the trolls faltered, confused. The tide that had surged with unstoppable ferocity was momentarily stilled by that single note of power. "Rohan has come," said Denethor, smiling with joy. From beyond the ridgeline, like the rising of a storm, came a wall of riders. Spear tips glinted like fire beneath the dawn light. Golden hair streamed like banners in the wind. King Theoden rode at the front, helm crowned with gold, eyes alight with vengeance. And behind him, thousands. The cavalry of the West had arrived. The Witch King screamed in fury. His shriek was no longer triumphant, it was edged with panic. The tide had shifted. He turned his back and summoned his steed, preparing to ride out to meet the forces of Rohan. But he was not quick enough. "You will not escape again," bellowed Gandalf, raising his staff. Light erupted from the crystal at its tip like a blade of divine will. Saruman unleashed a wave of force, pinning the steed in place. And then Gandalf moved like judgment itself, his sword drawn, gleaming with fire. The Witch King turned. Too late. Gandalf's blade passed through, iron, sinew, and spirit of malice. There was a moment of gladness, of relief easing the hearts of all defenders present. Then, the Nazgul form ruptured from within his crown, clattering to the stone as his body dissolved into black ash and bitter wind. He was gone. For a moment, the battlefield stilled. Then the earth shook. Upon the field, the armies of Rohan were marshaled. From the high ground beyond the city, they beheld the siege in full, smoke rising like a funeral pyre, towers crumbling, the gate broken, the fields thick with enemy and flame. But not one horseman wavered. King Theoden, golden helm gleaming in the morning sun, rode down the line of riders. His eyes, once dulled by shadow, now burned with the light of old kings, fury, purpose, and pride. Beside him rode the lady, veiled in helm and armor, her identity concealed. And sat behind her, concealed by her cloak, was Merry, eyes wide with dread and horror at what he saw. Minas Tirith burned before them. The king raised his sword to the sky, its edge catching the sun. They had arrived a couple of hours before the battalion of Lord Goggins, thanks to their steeds. He prayed silently they would not arrive too late. Now is the hour. Forth, and fear no darkness. Spears shall be shaken. Shields shall be splintered. A sword day. A red day. And the sun rises. The horns of Rohan blared again, echoing across the plain like the roar of ancient wrath. The sound shaking many an orc to their ironclad boots. Then the king turned and shouted one last time, "Ride now. Ride for ruin. And the world's ending." The line of horsemen surged forward. Thousands of hooves thundered against the earth. Down the slope they came, not a charge, but a wave. A tidal onslaught of steel, fury, and death. Banners streamed behind them like fire. The sun finally broke above the clouds, as if their coming was of some divine timing. The front line of Mordor never stood a chance. Orcs were trampled, flung, cleaved, shattered beneath the stampede of vengeance. War machines were broken, siege ladders smashed, trolls gored beneath long lances. Minas Tirith's defenders saw them from the wall, and hope, long dead in their chests, flickered anew. Gondor and Rohan had stood alone. Now they stood together. But even triumph is not without cost. They had broken the front lines. The siege engines were in ruin. The black tide had been pushed back. Yet, just as hope dared to shine, shadows darker still crept forth once more. Across the eastern plain, a trumpet sounded, deep and foreign. From the broken remnants of Osgiliath, more legions began to surge. And with them, thunder. Not the thunder of hooves, but of titanic feet. The ground quaked, and from the smoke rolled forth the war beasts of Harad, the Mumakil. Dozens of them, towering like walking fortresses, each one bore archers and spearmen upon its back. Their tusks were cased in iron and barbed. The riders of Rohan beheld the sight, and dread returned. Theoden's eyes widened. "Reform the line," he bellowed, wheeling his horse amidst the confusion. "Hold steady. Brace your spears." But many faltered. This enemy was unlike the others. No orc or troll, but towering beasts bred for war. Unstoppable, merciless, monstrous. One of the Mumakil charged. Its roar drowned out the horns of battle. Snowmane reared. The king held firm, his sword raised high as he turned to face the beast. Then, impact. The creature's massive tusk caught them in a sweeping blow, a blur of motion and horror. Horse and rider were flung 50 feet through the air like twigs in a storm. The sound of the landing, a sickening thud. "The king," someone cried. "The king has fallen." Chaos rippled like a wave through the line. Rohirrim scattered, disoriented, shaken by the loss of their leader and the sheer force of the enemy. The line buckled. Another Mumakil charged, trampling men and horse beneath thunderous feet. Black arrows rained from above. Blood soaked the grass. Screams filled the sky. The golden charge had turned to red ruin. They were being overrun. The marshal, Eomer, turned just in time to see the next wave crashing down. More Mumakil thundering across the Pelennor, sweeping aside his kin like leaves in the wind. The line had rallied, yes, but it would not hold. Not long. Not against this. Then hope truly left him. Looking in the distance, he saw them. Ships. Black sails, countless. They approached from the Anduin, gliding upon the water. Mordor's reinforcements. The final blow. His breath caught. His knuckles whitened around his sword. "We are lost," he whispered, eyes filled with dread. "They bring the end." And then, atop the lead ship, something changed. A flag unfurled, rippling defiantly in the morning breeze. Not black, but red, white, and blue. He blinked. The flag was unmistakable. The stars and stripes. The colors of Goggins. His eyes widened. His voice rose from disbelief to a cry of joy. "We are saved," he roared. "The Lord Goggins. The Goggins has come." A cheer broke from the soldiers nearest to him. Suddenly, the ship rammed ashore. The gangplank slammed down, wood grinding on stone, and from the smoke, he emerged. Lord Goggins, clad in tattered army fatigues, shirtless beneath his bulletproof vest, his muscles glistening with sweat. He leapt from the ship, boots smashing the ground with a heavy thud. "Blitzkrieg motherfuckers," he roared, voice booming like a war drum. At his side stood Aragorn, grim and regal, and Duril at the ready. Legolas, already loosing arrows. Gimli, battle-axe clenched tight, beard wet with sea salt. Gollum, wild-eyed and snarling, a curved dagger in each hand, wearing the armor given him in Helm's Deep. And behind them, barely visible at first, were the most unexpected warriors of all. Frodo and Sam, dressed in flak jackets stitched by elven tailors in Rivendell, wielding twin hobbit-sized rifles forged in Erebor. Custom triggers, custom stocks, rune-etched barrels. They all looked up at Goggins. He nodded, giving signal, and the dead poured forth behind them. A tidal wave of green wraiths, spectral warriors released like the sound of wind in a crypt. They howled as they fell upon Mordor's rear lines, sweeping through orcs and trolls like a flood through dry leaves. Terror broke like a fever. Orcs turned and fled. Trolls bellowed in fear, slashing even their own in confusion. The Mumakil reared, trumpeting wildly as the dead flowed between their legs and tore at their legs. But Goggins, he didn't pause. He charged. A belt-fed machine gun slung across one arm. He sprayed death into the ranks of Mordor like he was spraying a lawn with pesticide. Want some? Get some, he howled. Orcs exploded in showers of flesh and blood. Trolls dropped screaming as tracer rounds tore through their skulls. Sam ran beside him, clutching his rifle tight. "It's like potato harvest, Mr. Frodo," he cried, gunning down a retreating orc with the satisfaction of uprooting a troublesome weed. He ducked behind a ruined cart, reloaded with steady hands, and added with a half laugh, "If my gaffer could see me now." Then he popped up and dropped another orc with a clean shot to the head. Just ahead, Frodo's eyes were focused. He flipped the safety off his rune-etched rifle, exhaled slowly and whispered, "For Bilbo." Then he pulled the trigger, unleashing a storm of bullets into the enemy ranks. Behind them, Aragorn led the sword-bearing vanguard, slicing orcs and evil men of Harad. Gimli roared as he hewed low, his axe cleaving into the troll's leg with a bone-crunching crack that sent the beast staggering. In the citadel, Gandalf and Saruman had climbed atop a wall to see what fared on the battlefield. "By the valor," Saruman breathed. "We must join them, Gandalf. Victory is within our grasp." Gandalf didn't answer but turned, leading all with him down to the gate. The battlefield had turned again. Even Gollum had a role, not slinking in shadows or staying out of harm's way. Gollum was a veteran of the Helm's Deep battle. His role in this battle was to be a field medic. Scurrying across the battlefield in a tattered green armband, his large eyes darting wildly for the wounded, he slapped on bandages with surprising delight. He hissed instructions no one understood and stabbed at injured orcs still clinging to life. "Hold still, precious, or you'll leak everywhere." He slapped a band-aid on a bleeding Rohirrim's forehead and darted off. Among the chaos, Goggins ran through smoke and chaos, muzzle flash illuminating the darkness as he cut through orc ranks. Then, he stopped, spotting Snowmane lying twisted, unmoving, blood pouring from his flank. Beneath the fallen steed, King Theoden, crushed, bleeding and dying. Goggins dropped to his knees. "Smeagol," he barked. "We got a man down. Need immediate medical evac here, son." He pressed 2 fingers to the king's neck. Weak pulse. He started chest compressions without wasting time. 1, 2, 3, 4, he grunted, sweat pouring. "Don't you fucking quit on me, little bitch. We never fucking quit." The king's eyes flickered open, clouded, dim, but conscious. You have saved us, my Lord Goggins," Theoden gasped. "I go now, to the halls of my fathers, and even in their mighty company, I shall not now be ashamed." His eyes began to close. Goggins wasn't having it. "They ain't want you there," he snapped unceremoniously. "We got fucking work to do, man." Without warning, he stabbed a needle of adrenaline straight into the king's chest. The effect was immediate. Theoden jolted. His eyes flew wide open as if struck by lightning. "What power is this?" he roared, sitting bolt upright, pain forgotten. "Not even in the days of my youth have I ever felt this alive." And right then, Gollum arrived. He stumbled forward, holding a water flask and a roll of duct tape. "Smeagol is here, sir. Now your leg's broke, but that ain't shit," Goggins growled, slapping Theoden's shoulder like a coach. "I ran 100 miles on broken legs, piss and blood. You gonna be all right." Theoden wheezed, half in euphoria, half in shock, trying to speak. Goggins stood up, turned to Gollum. "Smeagol, medical evac this little bitch. Then get your creepy little ass back in the fight." "Yes, sir." Smeagol moves fast, very fast. He squeaked, scuttling over on all fours and dragging the king across his cloak towards the city. The tide of battle roared on, steel clashed, beasts roared and wailed, gunfire rattled through the smoke, but somewhere within that storm of fury, a stillness formed. Amidst the swirling carnage of the battlefield, a moment formed as if destined. There they stood, the Fellowship, with some notable additions. Ragged, bloodied, but strong. Aragorn, sword dripping with black blood. Legolas, eyes alight, firing his rifle. Gimli, panting through gritted teeth, his axe now notched with 100 kills. Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, standing side by side, their guns hot and smoking. Gollum, crouched low with bandages hanging from his loincloth. Gandalf and Saruman, robes stained, staffs crackling. Boromir, Faramir, and Denethor, shoulder to shoulder, shields splintered, but spirits awoken with hunger for battle, beside Eomer, who had discovered his sister upon the field of battle, and stood by her. The marshal's helm was cracked, but joy was in his face at finding himself in such mighty company, in moment that would never be forgotten. They stood together, guardians of the West, elves, dwarves, wizards, men, hobbits, and one lady, in a circle upon the Pelennor, a group of warriors, their backs to one another, their eyes to the horde. No words were needed. They knew and they rejoiced. Steel sang, spells erupted, bullets tore through shadow and flesh. Enemies surged, only to be broken, again and again and again, until the ground was no longer earth, but a hill of corpses. A mountain of death encircling the last living hope of Middle-earth. They were surrounded, but not overrun. And then it came. A new horn sounded, deeper than Rohan's, but louder than Gondor's. The battalion of Lord Goggins had arrived. From the north, from the direction the Rohirrim had come. Men, dwarves, and elves, all clad in patchwork, modern armor, and cloaks of old, all bearing the insignia of Goggins. Red, white, and blue, painted with enamel into every chest plate. The elite fighting force of Middle-earth. They moved with chilling precision. Not a word, not a shout, only action, only death. The enemy turned, realizing too late. They were trapped. Between Anvil, the unyielding Fellowship, and the hammer that was Goggins' unstoppable battalion. Between them, the armies of Mordor cracked. The tide shattered. The wargs fell. The trolls wailed. The remaining Mumakil taken down by high-caliber weaponry. Gondor's defenders, from rampart and rubble, stared in breathless awe. They had not witnessed a battle. They had witnessed a massacre. And at its center stood Lord Goggins, shirtless and steam rising from his body like a furnace, lowering his weapon with calm finality. The battle was over.
Thanks for joining us on this adventure. If you enjoyed the journey and are eager for more wild fan fiction, don't forget to hit that like button, share with your fellow fans, and subscribe for more episodes. And if you're as enchanted by the idea of Middle-earth meeting Hogwarts as we are, make sure to check out our series exploring this magical crossover. Your support brings these worlds to life. Until next time, keep the fantasy alive.